The industry is in a tough place. It feels like it's in a transitionary period. It feels like it can either explode triumphantly into the future, or it feels like it can fall away because the cost of entry is really, really high. My job certainly right now is to continue to find value for people. And I think a lot of us are doing that. I think most of us are doing that because there's a handful of luxury places in the city that can do well. But, you sit down with a Bordeaux house and their second wine, okay, not to call out names, but I did a first growth lunch recently, and their second wine is the cost of a first growth, first label just a couple of years ago. They were asking for over $1,000 a bottle. Where does that fit in this landscape right now? Who's buying that?
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You've worked over the last 5 years in a range of spots, from multiple Michelin-starred restaurants to still premium but more casual spots around Toronto.
Yeah.
Looking back over the last 5 years, what are some of the things you think have changed most in the way people are drinking?
I don't know that people have adjusted the way that they drink. I know that there's a lot of conversation right now about people drinking less. I don't actually see that trend. I think that maybe cocktails have taken a stronger position in the lead, but that also feels maybe more. That feels like it's more of the younger generation that are going that way, and I do think that cocktails are maybe more immediately understandable. There's more intense flavors, there's textures, there's a lot of things for people to grasp onto. Where wine, there's still a ton of gatekeeping around it. I I think I'm still selling a lot of the same things. Maybe it's a second wine from a top house or something like that. But all the things that I've loved over the years are still the things that I get to sell.
Okay.
And maybe that's just because I have a strong personality, that I have a strong sense of salesmanship. But the biggest thing that I'll say is that the spend hasn't changed.
Okay.
So it means that maybe the quality is dropping, or the entry point is dropping.
How so if the spend hasn't changed? Are people buying more cheaper bottles?
People are spending the same amount of money in the restaurant space or
Oh.
the spaces that I'm in, but what they get for that dollar point is lower.
Yeah, because wine prices keep going
Yeah.
up and up and up.
Yeah. I mean, a few years ago, it was so great to transition people from a great bottle of Barolo to a great bottle of Inferno Reserva from Valtellina. Well, now the price of that looks the same as the price of the Barolo, so we're walking them into Valtellina Superiore,
Yeah.
and or Langhe Nebbiolo. And even the price point on something like Langhe Nebbiolo has gotten so high, you're going, what are the next versions of this wine that we can lead people into? If somebody was spending $150 in a restaurant 5 years ago, they're still spending $150. They're just not getting the cocktail, the app, the main, the wine, the
Yeah.
dessert.
Yeah. What about stylistically? Have you noticed any shifts from some styles that were super popular a few years ago that are maybe waning? Other ones that are gaining steam?
It also possibly has to do with the places that I've been. I haven't sold a bottle of Amarone in a couple of years, which I'm okay with. I do like Amarone, but its place with oysters, that was very common several years ago, seems to have waned. And I do think in general, a lot of those riper, richer, more powerful styles have pulled back. But part of that could be the absence of California
Yeah.
on the market. As people are looking for secondary or tertiary wines to fit that mark, they're not finding exactly what they're looking for. So they start to look at different models. I would say that, wines like Brunello, which were always popular, are definitely usurping that position. So people are asking for more texture, and that opens up the possibilities quite a
Yeah.
bit.
It's something I keep hearing is that you would think maybe Argentina or Australia or Spain
Yeah.
take the space that was California, but I'm just hearing more and more it's Italy, which it's quite a jump in style.
Yeah. But I think the more I talk to people who are in that position, there's some particular thing that they really enjoy in California that just doesn't hit somewhere else. And to be frank, often I think it is a little bit of extra sugar that we're not accounting for, a little bit of extra sweetness, even that over ripeness, that slightly caramelly, raisinated quality that maybe other places in the world, they tend to leave it out. They're looking for an excess of ripeness, but not an excess of raisination and sweetness.
Then why do you think Italy is gaining the ground there? Because that's not what, say, Brunello is known for.
No, I think there's a shifting. There's a shifting in taste, and people are looking at different styles that they recall, that they knew that they were drinking years ago, that were usurped by this great big apothec and bread and butter and all of these things. But now they're going back and remembering, oh, I really like this wine. Several years ago, I really liked that bottle of Brunello I had back in 2010 or whatever the case may be. And the fact is, I don't think there's been a better time to drink Italian wines than there is now, especially with the trio of vintages kind of across Italy, 19, 20, 21. All of those wines right now stand up. And that's an important factor.
You mentioned gatekeeping in the wine industry still. What did you mean by, compared to cocktails, there's gatekeeping in wine?
When you talk to somebody who wants to build you a great cocktail, they want to learn everything that you're trying to drink in a glass and make the best version of that. I think in a lot of times when you're talking to a wine person, they want to put what they really like in front of you and convince you it's the best thing out there, but then also keep these surprises for themselves. It's a long journey to get information.
How common is that? Because every single somm who's been on my podcast has said this.
Yeah.
Do you really think there are a lot of wine professionals out there that are trying to push their own preferences onto guests more so than listening?
I think there's two sides to that question. One is there's a lot of spaces that aren't willing to hire somms. There's a lot of spaces that aren't willing to spend that money. They don't see the return on investment. At least it's not spelt out to them. And so a lot of the great somms end up leaving the industry, going into adjacent fields, end up working as wine agents or areas where they can actually extol the virtues of great wine and get paid for it, because that's such an important factor. So many of the great somms that I came up with definitely left the industry post-COVID or during COVID. But ultimately, when you think about people who are going and pursuing their different accreditations, there's not a clear pathway for them when they come back as an advanced somm, or definitely not as a master somm. So you're not seeing them in those prime roles. A lot of the people who are coming up right now, I mean, it's just the nature of a young somm. They get excited about a lot of things, and those are the things they want to showcase, forgetting about the fact that familiarity is comfort. Forgetting about the fact that somebody who says they want to drink Sancerre doesn't want to be walked down to Languedoc and Picpoul or Royer or Quincy. They want to drink what they want to drink. And your job often as a somm is to put that thing in front of them and say, yes, that was the right choice. Because it is, right?
So where does it leave the industry now?
The industry is in a tough place. It feels like it's in a transitionary period. It feels like it can either explode triumphantly into the future, or it feels like it can fall away because the cost of entry is really, really high. My job certainly right now is to continue to find value for people. And I think a lot of us are doing that. I think most of us are doing that because there's a handful of luxury places in the city that can do well. But, you sit down with a Bordeaux house and their second wine, okay, not to call out names, but I did a first growth lunch recently, and their second wine is the cost of a first growth, first label just a couple of years ago. They were asking for over $1,000 a bottle. Where does that fit in this landscape right now? Who's buying that? Does it go on?
My portfolio is so different now than it was a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, I had $200 like Australian Tasmanian sparkling wines.
Right.
And now everything is like 40 and under, because that's what
people are responding to right now. That's what people are buying. But it's not necessarily just on the wine industry. It's not because wine has gotten more expensive that people are buying less expensive wine. It's because everything has. It's because every little piece inside the restaurant, if an appetizer was $15 2 years ago, it's $30 now. And that's the reality of the business. Nobody's being egregious or trying to profiteer, or profit maxing maybe is the new term for that, off of the changes to the industry. It's just that logistics have gotten more expensive. The through line for everything, all of the DOP products, all of the AOC products, everything has gotten infinitely more expensive over the last couple of years.
Well, even just beyond the wine, like, so in your current role at Henry's restaurant, you are the GM. So I'm imagining
Yeah.
you're seeing a more holistic view of
Yeah.
what it's taking to run a restaurant.
Yeah, of course. The great thing about looking at all the costs is the one that's the most static is wine and alcohol. Those are things that feel controllable. Those are the areas where we can say, well, we know what our cost of goods are. We know what our percentages are, and we can work with those really, really easily. But a lot of the suppliers, a lot of the meat products, cheeses, whatever, I mean, we have these bouncing tariffs coming from the US. We have just unsteady supply of everything. And one day you're paying, $5 a pound for something, and the next day it's 15. But we don't have the luxury of changing the price on the menu day by day based on.
You can't just triple
like.
an entree's price.
You can't. You can't. No, unfortunately not. I mean, fortunately, everybody likes to feel grounded in what's there. And the menu looking the same week over week is a valuable thing, of course.
What was it like going from pure wine buying roles into more of a GM role?
When you're just buying wine, it's interesting. It's fun, of course. Choosing the wines for a list is certainly one of the great joys that I have. Tasting with agents and so on. I mean, it's all very fun, but I'm a big proponent for hospitality. That's what drives me in the industry. That's why I'm still here. It's because I like to make people have a good time in surprising ways. And in the positions I was in, I wasn't as readily able to do that because my job was just wine. And an immensely valuable thing to the spaces that I was in, but I wanted to have a little bit more say about the shape of the dining experience, about how we were approaching, about where we could take a pause, where we could go a bit faster. And I didn't have that opportunity. I think sometimes when you're in more fine dining environments, the experience can be very foreign, very staccato. You have all these elements of service being drilled on top of you without a sense of hospitality because there's so many steps of service. And I really enjoy the moment where that all drifts away and you're just in this genuine moment of talking to somebody about things that you really like, about the food that they're eating, about the experience that they're having, because those are the things that are memorable. Your fork being put on the right every single time probably isn't that memorable. Or if it is, it's memorable in a bad way. It was this weird alienating thing where they kept taking my fork and moving it to the wrong place. So I wanted to have a little bit more involvement in shaping those elements of service.
I realized I didn't ask, what is Henry's? Could you share a little bit about what is the food like? What is the wine program?
Yeah. I mean, Henry's is 4 years old now. And my understanding is it's been through a lot of different versions of itself. But today, its identity is a neighborhood spot. It's a spot that can give many different versions of itself to the people who are in that neighborhood, because it is a coffee shop, it is a wine shop, then it's a wine bar and restaurant. We do brunch on the weekend. We do a really casual prefix on Tuesdays. The idea is it's a place that should feel really comfortable. It has an evolusive wine program, has a really great cocktail program. Chef Camilo and the team in the kitchen are incredible. The quality of food, I think, even in the 8 months that I've been there, has never been better.
How would you describe the food?
It's comforting. It's international. There are dishes that are familiar, but there's definitely a unique Brazilian or South American influence there. Chef is from Brazil. There's spices, there's richness, there's depth of flavor. It takes really familiar things and just slightly alters them in the kitchen. The technique is really, really great. I mean, the quality of the sauces, the depth of flavor and so on. We make all of our stocks in-house. We make all of our breads in-house, all of our pastas in-house. So the quality of ingredients, that homemade texture,
Yeah.
and then the richness and the layering, that comes in on top of it creates something really, really complex. And even though it's familiar, I think it's got a unique identity in the city.
Okay. And then tell me about the wine program.
Yeah. So
Because the owner, Ben, also is an importing agent. So
yeah,
it must be
yeah.
an interesting new challenge where you're balancing wines from that agency, which are great,
Yeah.
and then wines to then fully have a complete program.
I mean, yes and no. The wines that Ben has always been attracted to are really good, really classic wines. A lot of highly, highly regarded producers in there. Lucien Crochet is in there. Pascal Cotat is in there.
Oh, I've told
Alzinger is in
many
there.
people and done it myself, like Wednesday at Henry's,
Yeah.
go for half price Burgundy, like or you're gonna
Yeah,
have a great
for
time.
sure. I mean, half price everything is a great thing. When you want to go into La Doire or Montagny and you're just unfamiliar, that's a great time to do it when the cost of entry is cut in half, literally cleaved in two. But like any wine program, you're always looking for the gap. You're always looking to satisfy as many palates as you can, give people value on one hand, these top celebration bottles on the other hand, and everything in between. Do I have the right champagne? Am I covering all the categories that I think should be covered? Do I have a Blanc de Blanc and a Blanc de Noir? Do I have something that's oak aged and something that's, way more austere and mineral? And that follows any category. The really great thing about that program is I have wines at two ends of the spectrum by the glass. I have a $15 glass pour every single day, both white and red, the wine of the day. And they're cheerful wines, but I don't consider them cheap. Right now, I'm pouring a Malgousia from Drama, Greece. I think it's really interesting, and it satisfies the palate that's looking for something like a really expressive New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. It's aromatic, it's perfumed, it's ripe. We're not sacrificing anything by putting a wine at that price point. Then the other side is where I get to play even more is I've got something in and around the $30 mark, which is the Sommelier pick. So there, in white, I'm pouring a wine from a 1,000-year-old monastery, the Coenobium wine, which is a blend of Verdicchio, Trebbiano, Malvasia, volcanic soils. I mean, hyper expressive and mineral.
Where's that from?
Lazio, Italy. Yeah, and it's really fun, but that's just probably until the end of the day. Tomorrow I'll have something new in that spot.
How do you make that work from just like a cost of goods perspective?
I'm always looking for value.
Yeah.
Always. And the great thing is I've been doing wine for 9 years in the city. I've seen so many great wines, and in other buying positions I've been in, I've had to say, I'm sorry, it's too cheap. Which is to say, the wine would end up not expensive enough on the menu. It would pull down everything else or make everything else look too expensive. When you're putting a $45 bottle price in a list whose entry point is $70, as an example.
You couldn't just raise the price?
But that doesn't feel fair.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel fair. I don't believe in gouging people just because something's cheaper. I mean, there's fair margins and there's not. I've always believed in a sliding scale as well. When you go up, that price should come down. That you don't take margins to the bank. You don't take percentages to the bank. You take real dollars every single time. So I'm not sacrificing anything looking at wines that are cheaper. And in fact, if anything, I'm finding more discoveries for myself, for my guests, for the people around me, because they are wines that I've had to in the past say no to. I always loved Pic Pool, but when you have the option to list Pic Pool or Sancerre or Chablis, well, those other two are going to be more expensive wines, and that always looks good to the person you're buying for at the end of the day. But now I can put Pic Pool as that $15 glass pour, and it's a discovery for people, and it's super delicious, and it's fresh, and I feel really good about the quality, and the price point doesn't bother me.
Okay. And then what about the somm picks? How do you think about COGS there?
I mean, in the same way, the margins are a little smaller for sure, but again, it's a more expensive wine to begin with, and I'm hunting for things that I think are really special that people will respond to. That's where I get to find really unique appellations with people who are doing really, really great work. I've been pouring La Bruja from Commando G or Commando G from Sierra de Gredos.
I remember buying that in New York for $25, though. It's sad that, yeah, that's now the Somm pick price.
But that has to do with the fact that, they're in such a high altitude place. This vintage that we're pouring, 2024, they had so much frost. They're not able to make a single parcel wine in that place this year. They're not able to make a single village wine. They have to pick everything from the whole region and say, okay, this is what's going into that wine. It's the risk that comes with planting Grenache at high altitudes, for sure. But, okay, you've heard of Sierra de Gredos, but I guarantee you 90% of the people who are walking into my space haven't. So again, it's a place to play, but I'm not telling people they have to buy that wine, right? It's just an option. And then there's everything in between. There's even a bit of white Burgundy that's more expensive. There's a Brunello by the glass that's more expensive, which is really delicious.
And how do things break out? Like, is it mostly people are taking up that $15 wine? Is it 50-50 with that and the higher end ones?
I mean, the fact is, when we break down the glass sales, we're looking at an average of $20 to $24 a glass. So people are responding in both ways. There's different markets too, right, that are walking in. Some people just want something that's really accessible and they don't want to think about, and that's really great. I already have that. And some people want to spend more time, be more thoughtful. So when they get a glass of Timorasso, they get really excited by it and they want to spend the money on that because it's so unique and so delicious as well. And they do think about it.
What have been some of your biggest surprises?
Not completely a surprise, but people responded really well when I brought Sino Mavro on, Timiopoulos. And I'm not surprised because I went to the property in Greece and I fell in love with the wine myself, but I didn't think that the response from my guests would be so good. But I picked up 24 bottles 1 week and sold them all within the week. And that was quite the shock.
Yeah.
It's.
Do you think it's down to you having been there and conveying that story and that experience to them? You think if you put it on the list but weren't in the restaurant yourself, you would have sold the 24 bottles?
I wasn't the one doing all the selling. My staff were. I think people get excited about things that are unfamiliar too. And when the price is good and the access point is really easy, and when you give people sometimes the right words to sell what they're selling, I mean, the easy way to talk about that wine is it's sort of like poor man's Barolo. And people are like, okay, I know what that means. I know what that is. I know what that looks like and how it tastes. And then when it does deliver on those things that people are asking of it, I think that's even more surprising. Not surprising, but there's no letdown with it. When the quality is really good, and again, that's something that I go looking for, people respond really well to those.
It's an interesting way to, I might say this is Greece's answer to Nebbiolo rather than saying it's the poor man's Barolo.
Yeah. Greece doesn't have an answer to anything that's being produced in the rest of the world. They have their own unique grapes that they're finally learning to work with in the best possible way. But like anything, you can deal with aromatics, you can deal with textures. This idea that Sino Mavro is sort of a cross between Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo, that you get some of those firm tannins, but you get some of the savoriness. Yeah, on the one hand, it's an idea that makes sense, but when you actually explore the grape, there's such a unique element there. And I think this savory tomato quality comes through in a distinct way that even pulls it out of a fruity quality. Maybe tomato is a fruit. I don't know. I haven't kept up with that.
I think last I checked, it might be.
Yeah. So there you go. But it's tomato fruit. Doesn't fit in our classic red fruit diaspora, cherries and strawberries.
Is there anything else that you've done at Henry's in this GM role where you can have a more holistic approach to hospitality?
I mean, I get to shape the culture of the space, and there was definitely a bit of leadership missing in the space, which is why I was hired. But ultimately, it's the shape of service. It's the way that, one, we have these really important SOPs, practices, steps of service, but the other is that I've trained people or I've helped them to understand that they're just guide rails. they just keep us on track. But it's all the gray areas. It's all these sort of unknowns that make the industry really exciting, that you can have fun with. And I think people have responded really well to it. I've brought in, of course, wine training and food training and things like that allow them to just spend a little bit more time thinking about what the entire experience looks like. And I've asked people to start thinking about the words that they use, about the descriptors. There's a fun thought exercise where you have to describe a strawberry but never use the word strawberry. And when you start thinking that way about everything, I think it unlocks a lot of fun descriptions, but it really challenges you to change the way that to stop being a robot space. It's just fun. It's just fun. I was sitting with my partner recently, and I was asking her, like, what does milk taste like? And how is milk different from cream and cream different from cheese? And we threw it into Chat GPT, and over, it was just like, cream is like milk. Milk is like cream. Cream is like cheese. I just think it's important to sit with those distinctions because, there are so many white wines that go through malolactic conversion. But what's the quality of the milk there? Does it go into sour cream territory? Is it like really, really fresh milk? Is it churned butter? Even butter, I mean, as a term. Is it like roasting in the sun? Is it caramelizing in the oven? Or is it just freshly churned? All of those things are unique and distinct. And when you hook onto those things, I think you get to a closer place of being able to analyze, but also describe food and wine.
Speaking of food and wine, if someone wants to come to Henry's for the first time, when should they come? What should they order?
I think Tuesday has always been a fun entry point for people because it is a more casual experience. There's a prefix experience where you're choosing a protein and everything's sort of built around it already. And we're already delivering it with some of our favorite elements. So some of the work of going through the menu is already done, but there's a lot of standouts in the menu. Any day of the week, you're going to have a good time, and definitely Wednesdays. Also for half-price bottles. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. But how you order is really, it's so personal. There's things that I really love, like the beef tartare and the shrimp toast, and the shrimp toast has been a staple since day one. And there's other things that everybody seems to gravitate towards, like a pasta with pistachio pesto and basil and burrata. Just flavors that work so well together. I think the best way, the way that I have the most fun, and in turn, I think my guests have the most fun, is when they start thinking about the dishes, but they start asking which wines should we go through, because we can pour multiple wines over the course of that experience in half glasses, in full glasses, by the bottle, whatever the case may be. But that's just the most fun to me in any restaurant environment. Can it all come together in a way, or were they sort of built as little islands? Here's the cocktail space, here's the wine space, and here's the food space. Hopefully, if I've done my job, it's all coming together in a way that helps to build on that identity of Henry's.
You're actively pursuing the Master Somm certification. After getting your advanced, what is keeping you motivated to keep pushing?
You're going to laugh about it, but boredom was the first driver. When I finished the advanced exam and I came back with the pin, I came back with a huge sense of relief, with a small sense of accomplishment. I think that sense took a little time to grow, because
you should be proud. I got certified before you did, and now you're ahead of me. You're not slacking.
Yeah, but it was sort of like, this pin is just so small, and to represent all of the work that went into it and so on, it felt a little bit empty coming back from that and being like, okay, what's next? And I sat with it for a couple of months, and what I was realizing was, because I wasn't studying anymore, I was like, I'm done. This is what I always set out to do, was to become an advanced sommelier when I started those studies, and that was it. But now I was at home with excess free time. I wasn't studying. I didn't feel that motivation to keep on it, or rather, I had considered myself to be done, and I was like, but the wine world didn't stop. They're not, They're still making appellations. They're still planting vineyards, all this thing. So I still want to be in that realm. So the next logical step was start studying for Master Sommelier theory and see what that looks like, because it's different from studying for certified. It's different from studying for advanced.
How so?
It's the level of depth, and we go to the level that we all want to go in the places that we're studying. But the fact is, no stone should be left unturned when you're going down this MS theory route. But you couldn't do it without the stepping stones of certified to advanced to now studying for MS. I tend to think about knowledge in a way that knowledge comes in spheres. It has to match your worldview. So when you start studying, you can't put all that really, really esoteric information in your head first. It just doesn't make sense. You have to think about the place, where it is in the world, and the type of climate, kind of generalized information.
And context, right?
And context. But once all that stuff sits, then all of a sudden you get to unlock the next sphere where things just start to make sense inside of that, because you've got the underlying information. And so you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And now this is going to be the deepest that I go for now. And then maybe after, who knows if I'll ever get that MS pin, but at some point I'm sure that I'll specialize. And in a lot of ways I already have. There are places where I feel a lot more comfortable talking about wine or cocktails or whatever the case may be that other people don't, but then they come in and they're like, but this is the area that I feel really confident in.
I heard one really cool study technique that you told me once, where it's like, rather than try to memorize the residual grams of sugar for every French wine appellation, figure out, okay, is like 3/4 of them 3 grams, and then memorize where is it different.
Yeah.
Rather than say, go every single one and then try to memorize it independently. Are there any other little tricks like that you've developed? Because that also is putting things in context.
It is. I think this is it. This is the most important thing about getting, even at the advanced level, is there's a lot of context to it. And when you understand the context, a lot of things fit in place. You might not know the word for the volcanic soil in Sicily, but if you know a lot of volcanic regions, you understand how it affects the winemaking, how it affects the vines, how it affects the water stress and things like that. We can follow the through line and everything, and then examine the outliers rather than taking the outliers as the drivers to a region.
What are some of those regions that you love to study?
My family's from Spain, so I've always had a passion for looking at Spanish wines.
What part of Spain?
They're from Galicia, from the northwest. So a lot of Albarino in that part of the world. But one of the first places that I went when I decided to travel alone was to Spain, and I drove from Barcelona up to Bilbao, west to Galicia, south to Lisbon, across to Madrid and Cuenca, back to, I was in Valencia, then to Priorat. So each time stopping in distinct winemaking regions.
And so, the wines of like Galicia to Priorat, what a jump.
Completely different. Definitely. But saturating yourself in any place is really one of the best ways to understand a place. When you're looking at the aspect of Alvaro Palacios's vineyard, it makes sense. When you're reading about it and somebody says, 70% gradient, you sort of have an idea maybe what that's like. But when you actually see it and you're actually feeling the Spanish sun overhead and looking at the shape of the buildings and meandering along the roads that wrap themselves around Priorat, there's things that click that don't when you're just reading books. And you're just, we have a lot of great technology that can take us a lot closer to places that we want to be, but the live experience is just unparalleled. So yeah, I've felt good in the past and currently extrapolating information about Spain better than I think other people who write it off as a cheap QPR place, which is fair. A lot of it is.
What is QPR?
Quality price ratio. Yeah. A lot of really undervalued wines, and they're playing catch up with themselves, definitely. But so that's, I mean, that whole country is a place I feel it's not true. I don't feel good about the south of Spain. It's still an area that I need to spend a lot more time exploring, especially Andalusia and Extremadura and Sherry, Jerez. But I've always felt confident there. I like Bordeaux a lot more than many other somms that I've met. Have always loved Bordeaux. It's one of the first wines that I started collecting and drinking, and one of the first great loves that I had was probably a 2006 Léoville Poiferret that just opened my mind and widened my eyes to what a wine can taste like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours after you open it, and how much depth and joy that offers. Châteauneuf-du-Pape was another great love of mine, and I've been and touched the soils and those big pudding stones and everything else.
It sounds like travel has really been key for taking the theory and making it kind of fall into place.
Yeah, it's definitely a big aspect of understanding, and I recommend anybody who's studying wine to go to a wine region, because you can wax poetical about values and winemaking philosophies and so on, but there's so many aspects of winemaking that are practical. And it really sinks in when you can see why a vineyard might be spaced the way it is, because the rocks are the way that they are. It just makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you mentioned Valtellina Inferno. Like, I went there in winter, but took off my jacket in that vineyard.
Right.
It's actually the warmest spot in the valley. So yeah, just stuff like that I'll never forget. Studying, there's a lot of sacrifice. You have to push out any other projects, hobbies, interests. What do you think makes it worth it for you?
Nothing. No, I enjoy it. I enjoy it at the end of the day. I gravitate towards knowledge. I've always been, I've always really enjoyed studying history. I've always really enjoyed studying geography, people, culture, places. I speak multiple languages. All of that stuff sort of fits in the world of wine. If I wasn't learning about wine, I'd be learning about something else. So that's a unique part of the motivation. The other side of it is you make time for something. I mean, this is part of my career. So I make a point to get up in the morning. On an ideal day at 8 a.m., I get up, I do 2 to 3 hours of study, have breakfast, maybe one more hour of study before I go to work. But then I go to work and I sell wine. So it all fits in the same realm of knowledge and experience. And again, to go back to the idea of volcanic soils, if I'm studying Lanzarote, Tenerife, the Canary Islands, it still makes me a better salesman for Sicily and Mount Etna, because the qualities that hold true that make really great wine there also make really great wine in Sicily. One just bleeds into the other in an important way.
Everything is connected. What has been the biggest benefit that you think you've gotten through pursuing CMS certifications?
The biggest benefit, I think it's opened the door to travel. The first thing that happened when I came back from the advanced course was I got to go to Greece and meet all the winemakers of Greece. And
Was that strictly they invited all the advanced songs?
No. It was a friend of mine, put me forward as a candidate for that. But, one of the factors of that is, from the Greek winemaker side, is they really want to talk to people with that level of knowledge that are in a position to sell those wines, because we're going with a level of understanding that already enhances the experience of sitting with those wines, where we can get into a more complex, more detailed conversation. We can talk about the future and what they're hoping to achieve, where somebody with, no knowledge of winemaking, no knowledge of international or Greek varieties, really, they don't have the context for those types of conversations. Winemakers and estates receive thousands of visitors, some places hundreds of thousands of visitors. But I've found many times that they come to life. They get excited when they realize you share this level of expertise. And it's not the level of expertise of a winemaker. It's just we have this shared enterprise where we both come at it with a little bit of extra knowledge, and we can get into more complex information and share that stuff. The stuff that, they've spent their life learning, that we've spent our lives learning, and nobody really cares about. I mean, there's never going to be a time where I stand at a table and talk about levels of malolactic conversion. Might tell my staff, whose eyes will glaze over, and they'll be thinking about what they're going to do at the end of the night. But don't we get really excited about techniques and training methods and things like that would just bore the average person? So that's been really fun in visiting places. Is it's like we share this little secret with those people that they don't get to share with many people.
Oh, 100%. Even my wife won't go. She doesn't want to go visit a vineyard anymore unless it's like a work trip, because she doesn't want just the generic spiel that they give to a tourist. She wants,
right.
She wants to go deep and spend time with them and find out what's really going on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what's fun. That's what's interesting.
What do you think it will mean to you if one day you do pass?
It's so hard. It's so hard because the chances are really slim. I mean, it does take an extraordinary amount of sacrifice and dedication and so on. And for every ideal day that looks like me getting up at 8 a.m. and doing 3-4 hours of study, there's the other day where I wake up hungover, don't do any study, don't eat anything, go to work, try to forget that I exist, and then go home. It's not easy. It's not easy putting yourself in a position to try and attain that knowledge. And if the mastery rule holds firm of 10,000 hours, not sure where I am in that 10,000 hours yet, but what'll it mean? I don't know. I can't say until I'm at least a little bit closer. Maybe if I possibly pass the theory exam that opens up the other portions of the exam, then it'll feel a bit more real. But right now it's just me trying to understand everything that I possibly can about wine in a controlled way.
You've already made it farther than 95% of people pursuing CMS? 99? I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so. There's, the pass rate for the people who do it sits around 20% for the advanced exam. But I was trying to find some numbers, and there's somewhere around 900 to 1,000 advanced sommeliers in North and South America together. So within the Court of Master Sommeliers America, which in the grand scheme of all the people that are working in the industry is not a big number.
Because relatedly, last year you won the CAPS Cup.
Yeah.
What motivated you to sign up?
Look, it's just a fun competition. It's super friendly, but competition in general is just a different way of thinking about the things that we're already thinking about. It's a way to challenge yourself. It's a way to ask different questions. And so the format for that was, I believe we had 5 wines in front of us that were blinds. We didn't know anything about them, where they were from, what the variety was. Naturally, we could tell white or red by color, but beyond that, there was some deductive reasoning involved. But then it was a series of maybe 25 questions where the answer is inferred by the style of wine.
Oh, and so you didn't have to guess, oh, this is a Gamay.
You had to infer that it was Gamay by the answer you wanted to give to the question, right? There was, and there was a Gamay there. There was a Beaujolais, and it was a cloudier production. And I mean,
that's one of my wines. That was my Beaujolais.
Yeah. Okay. So slightly cloudy, slightly lifted fruit textures. I'm sure there was a tiny bit of carbonic on that wine, all the things that put you in that category. But also, if you don't recognize those elements right away, what else is lending to that cloudy quality? What else is lending to the lifted fruit? I think there was a little bit of like VA lift on that wine as well. And so you could take it to many different places. If you're not in the classic spectrum as well, I mean, there's a ton of young Rioja that goes through carbonic maceration that you could easily walk over to there, unfiltered. I think there's good reason to think that could be Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley as well. But I think I had a pretty good line on those wines. I think all but one of them I knew exactly what it was. And so the questions almost felt like the most obvious answer was the right answer. But it was just fun. It was just fun at the end of the day. It's just a way to think about some cool wines and to taste some wines in a way that we don't always do it. And
Would you recommend other somms sign up? Should they be scared?
Always.
Oh, what if I don't
Always.
get them right?
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? The point is, like any form of competition, it's to challenge yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, I got to take home a case of Gianluca Di Loro's wine from delicious Chardonnay, but I wasn't like raising that up triumphantly around. It wasn't the World Cup or anything like that. It's just a fun little competition and a way to think about wine differently. And I recommend to every single person who's doing any sort of study of wine to do every competition they can, to do every unique masterclass they can. I mean, anything that challenges you is immensely valuable, because the nature of the world is egocentric. We put on blinders and we think what we think and the way we think is the way to think about those things.
They weren't holding themselves to the CMS advanced wine list, right? I'm sure
No.
it could have been
No.
any wines.
There's a Syrah white, there was a Gamay, there was an Ontario Chardonnay, which is maybe broaching the point of testability, as it were, in the CMS.
What would you say are the hallmarks of Ontario Chardonnay?
Acid. We get so much acid for free. I mean, there's such a strong backbone of acidity in Ontario Chardonnay, even in those hotter vintages.
But like, that's true of Chablis. So like, how in
No,
what way?
Chablis
In what
warmer now. Chablis warmer.
In what way? So do you think even more acid?
I think a lot of the Chardonnay that I really like in Ontario looks more like white Burgundy than it does like Chablis. I think that's the style that we can make really, really well. But the backbone of acidity behind it is so evident and obvious. And it has a tartar texture that maybe tastes like green apple sometimes. There's a lithe quality to it. There's a lean and lithe quality to it that stands out. And the second I noticed that glass, I mean, I practically could have called that it was Thomas Batchelder making the wine, but it just read like Ontario Chardonnay.
Is there any regions that you wish people were drinking more of, besides maybe the ones that you've already listed as your favorite?
There's so much discovery out there. You know, I don't wish more people were drinking any particular region. I just wish people were drinking more and willing to explore, because there's a world of discovery
Okay, so
out there.
I come into your restaurant and I say, I like Burgundy.
Great.
I want to drink Burgundy.
Yeah. I love that for you.
Yeah.
I mean, me too.
Yeah. Well, obviously, but sometimes, I mean,
So are there
to
other
the
places
point,
in the world that
yeah.
drink like Burgundy? I think it is the point and it's not the point, because Burgundy's Burgundy. And I think that we make a mistake when we start to try and go, oh, but this is also like Burgundy, or this is like poor man's Burgundy. Even though I said it about the Barolo, I think that's an access point for people, but I want people to drink wines on their own merits. I mean, the greatness of Ontario isn't that we have, you know, Wismar Wingfield production that can sort of chase the greatness of Prud'homme Montrachet. It's the fact that it's really, really delicious wine. Yeah. And when you take it on its own merits, it has this extra minerality. It has this extra texture that speaks to this place in Ontario.
How do you inspire someone to explore more, given how much great wine
I think more about the texture and the shape of a wine that they like than the specifics of the place. It's not like I'm like, okay, look, this is going to taste like Gevrey Chambertin, but it's, you know, it's from Australia, it's from Geelong or something like that. It's more like, listen, it sounds like you like really savory wines of depth, wines with good acid to back them up, things like that. And then I can go into any number of places. Yeah. Think about other cool climates, but not other cool climates that are doing Pinot Noir. What are they doing well in their cool climate? But my job also as a somm, my job also as that person in hospitality is, if you want to drink that thing, I'm there to put it in front of you. I have great Burgundy. But if you say, yeah, that's what I like, you know, maybe there's some great discovery in South Africa. I mean, that Hamelinard vineyard down all the way south has some really amazing surprises. And some of them are Pinot Noir, but there's also other grapes being grown there. I'm starting to think more and more that Syrah is better suited to cool climates than warm ones, that the best expressions that I'm enjoying the most are cooler, fresher, super peppery. super savory.
Obviously, you're excluding the Barossa Valley. Are you even excluding Hermitage? Is Hermitage too warm now?
I think young Hermitage is a really hard wine to drink. Okay, fine. It delivers on depth with age, but I think the same holds true in Barossa. Those young wines they're not my favorite Syrahs by any means. Côte Rôtie in a cooler vintage maybe is a better expression than Hermitage in a cool vintage. Those 21 Côte Rôties are just excellent right now. But I think you can walk even further in northeast of Vienne and get to the Collines Rhodaniennes, and there you get some really stunning examples of Syrah. And if you want to talk about value, of course the value is there as well. But I had an Ontario Syrah from Port Morisset recently that just knocked my socks off. I've had the Avani that you bring in, and it's 12.5% alcohol, but my God, does it deliver Syrah in a glass?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about competition, getting a wine like that in a glass is such a treat because you already know what it is. Now you just have to place it.
I know. And I mean, to your point on being there, like I had to stand in the Mornington Peninsula and feel winds coming from Antarctica.
Right.
To get why you could make Syrah like this there.
Yeah.
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 It's a beautiful wine.
Yeah. Extraordinary. What was the question again?
Just how you inspire people to drink more broadly.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most important thing is, when people are willing to discover, there's a lot out there. When they're not, and when they say, no, I want to stay in my comfort zone, you leave them in their comfort zone. Everybody's journey is their own. But the second they're willing to go on that journey with you, I mean, you can do it through things that are familiar. You can do it through things that are unfamiliar. I like to use texture as an avenue, but there's just so much out there. It's like, hey, do you want to taste a wine you've absolutely never experienced before? Do you want to taste a wine that's chock full of, earthiness and mushroom and sherry-like characteristics? Well, here's a vin jaune for you. You might not like it at all, but it's a discovery. And the wine world is full of those kind of things. And I think, I speak passionately about the subject. Enthusiasm is a great entry point for a lot of people as well. When you feel excited about something, that enthusiasm is infectious and people get there with you. Even if they don't like the wine, it happens. But sometimes they're just like, hey, listen, like, I really enjoyed that experience. I thought it was really fun. It was really cool. Don't like the wine whatsoever, but thank you for taking me there. And, if the worst thing that happens is they walk away with, that's a place I don't want to go back to, that's okay too. Because in the myriad of flavors and textures and so on in the wine world, it's okay to find the things that you don't like. It actually helps solve the problem of figuring out what you do like. Because it's like, well, it's not that. So great. I've now blocked all of these things.
What gets people more excited on that point when you're talking about something new? I tend to lean towards telling the stories of the people behind the wine less than the wine itself. But I feel like if it's different context. If you're in a restaurant and someone's going to have it with their food, you probably need to tell them what it's going to taste like.
I mean, that can be a part of it. I went up to the Granite Club to do a fun somm competition up there, and the first wine that I got to pour for everybody, I told them, you're not going to like this wine until you taste it with the food. And that's equally valuable. That's also a great discovery. I mean, this is one of the great things that wine does, is it solves an answer sometimes on the palate. But it was a Grand Cru Pinot Gris from Alsace. And I said, you're going to find this bitter. You're going to find this, maybe some of you will think it's a bit soapy, but the second you put this fish crudo on your palate with all its citrus and ginger, this wine's going to wake up, come to life. And 90% of the people were right there with me. They were like, yes, yeah, I didn't like that wine at all, and now I love it. And we get to do that in a restaurant. It's like, I'm going to pour this in the right moment. I'm going to give it to you when the dish is in front of you, when you put that sauce on the palate, and then try the wine. Yeah. That's definitely the thing I love most in this industry.
Oh, when that works, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I want to circle back because I think one of the important things right now is this whole thing that seems to be, coming down on our shoulders, that people are not drinking wine. And I want to know your opinion on that. Do you think it's true? Does it hold true in your life? Are people consuming less? Is it a
Yeah,
fad?
I mean, there's so many things to say. So Gen Z gets blamed.
Mm,
However, the oldest one is like 29, so I don't think that's fair. I didn't drink wine seriously until I was in my 30s. So
right.
I'm not going to blame Gen Z. I think there's a concerted government effort to stop people drinking, which is inexplicable to
Mm,
me. Like telling everyone that like 1 or 2 glasses a week is the safe limit.
yeah.
Like it's not, I don't think it's scientifically based. Like they'll say that it doubles your risk of cancer and they'll neglect to say from 0.1% to 0.20%,
Mm,
or that having rich friendships will add 10 years to your life. So maybe weigh, like if you can go out and drink wine with friends and have an amazing time, that might be worth having 0.1% more.
right.
Like I'm not a doctor,
Yeah, yeah.
but so like, it does seem like the government is doing that.
Mm,
There was a clip, maybe you saw it, that went viral with like the #2 podcaster in the world talking to the #7 podcaster in the world. And he's like, I had 3 glasses of wine, didn't get drunk, and it ruined the next 3 days of my life. Like I didn't get up I slept in the next morning. I ate worse. I couldn't go to the gym. I podcasted worse, blah, 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 blah. And it's just these two people that have audiences of tens of millions of guys in their 20s listening to this.
yeah, right.
And so I do think in many ways there's like real forces against wine.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think the values of younger generations, I think as well as millennials, is to drink things that are honest, authentic, transparent, real. And RTDs, White Claw, is sugar beer pretending to be a vodka soda filled with chemicals, and wine is sunlight and rainwater. And so I think,
Yeah.
I think ultimately truth will out,
Yeah.
but but you're not the only one who's been on this podcast and said, well, I've heard wine is declining. I haven't seen it in my restaurants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe fine dining and higher end restaurants are immune to it, but the pressures seem real. And I know at a macro level, at the LCBO say, I think only New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc has been growing lately, and only by a small amount, and everything
Also
else.
Ontario.
Mhm.
Also Ontario.
Well,
The LCB.
there's tailwinds because they got rid of California, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
especially before that, it was New Zealand Savvy B was the only thing growing. So the pressures
But I
seem
think
real.
this is also an area where I take issue is the idea that there will be exponential growth in everything.
No.
I mean, that's just strictly a capitalist position. If the levels stay even, that's not a bad thing. If the levels decline a little bit, well, maybe the certain category of people passed away last year that were drinking a considerable amount more. The other thing that I think holds true is that production levels have never been as high, and there is perhaps too much of everything on the market.
There's definitely too much, and prices are also
Prices are
too high. Like you mentioned, great discoveries in Hemel and Ard in South Africa. Like I tasted a lot of those wines in Wine Paris looking for one, and they wanted the prices for Burgundy, and I was just like, guys,
yeah.
like
I already don't want to pay the
can't do it.
prices
There's like
for Burgundy.
there's so many regions that I wanted to bring in wines from: Trento, Alto Adige, the Loire Valley, and I didn't think that they were worth, like,
Yeah.
you could not convince these people to sell their wine for a price that would then let me sell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good wine is just getting more and more
But I do
expensive.
think that's part of the equation. Like, how are we measuring the drop in consumption? Is it by total hectoliters sold around the world? Because there's so many facets of measurement for that. Are we only taking the end line of what's being sold in restaurants? Or are we taking the through line? Because there's a lot of people that I know that have these gigantic cellars that aren't buying a lot of wine anymore, but they're sure as hell drinking a lot of it.
Yeah.
But they already have it. Well, did we count those numbers 30 years ago when they bought those bottles? I mean, this is one of the tough things. There's a lot of gray area for those kind of stats, but I also think the type of consumption has changed recently. I mean, seeing a lot more edibles and things like that in the market means that people are still consuming, they're consuming something in this realm. It's just not wine or beer necessarily, but what I think will always hold true is you're never going to see in the middle of the Christmas table a pile of pot gummies. It's not going to replace a bottle of wine on those occasions. I think that's one of the nice things about wine is how it slots into celebrations and funerals and special occasions and time with friends and things like that. There's something special about sharing a bottle of wine with someone that you just can't hit with other consumables.
100%. The first written language that we know of is Sumerian. And they have a word for wine. But they were in southern Iraq. You don't make wine there.
Right.
So contained in the first written language that we know of is a word that implies there was wine trading happening from places that make wine to this place. And so given that it's that old, I'm bullish in the long term.
Yeah.
But in the short term, it's tough. I wish
But
I could
you
be
can
selling
also-
the $100 bottles now, but no one's buying them.
But you can also see those trends historically. I mean, the 1970s saw a huge glut in wine performance around the world. And again, there was an overproduction at the time. There were ostensibly some terrible, terrible vintages. That's kind of what we're seeing right now, isn't it? And when the whole world is screaming like the wine world's on fire, it probably does make people a little bit averse to engage with it. 'Cause like, well, what if there's no wine next year? You know? It's like, what if I really like this thing, but I can't find it anymore? I mean, to your point, there's so many factors being pushed through extraneously that put a sour light on everything, on this industry.
We just have to keep sharing great, delicious wine with people, and
I'll keep doing it.
well, I think ultimately the way that I make myself feel better is that I think maybe people had it really easy in wine for a while, in the sense that boomers grew up, got wealthy, and bought tons of wine. And it was aspirational because beer was bad then, cocktails were bad then, and weed was illegal.
Right.
So, all right.
So they had wine.
So they had wine. And now we have to work harder. So,
Yeah.
well, that we probably should already have been telling a better, more inclusive, more welcoming story, a less a gatekeeping way of approaching wine. And now we're just going to all have to figure that out, right?
So to that point, I'm reading a book on the Douro right now and the port wine trade and its history. And when oidium was affecting the vineyards, there was a writer, it might have been a forester at the time in Oporto, who said that oidium's bad, but apathy is worse. And we can treat oidium, but if apathy controls this production, we've lost it. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, right? There's a lot of extraneous factors, but the most important one is when we get lazy and comfortable in any industry, what happens to it?
Just need more hardworking people like you.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.